The silence in my house after the divorce was heavier than any shouting match I'd ever had with Tom. It wasn't just quiet. It was a void, a hollow ache that clung to the walls and followed me, from room to room. I'd wake up each morning, my hand stretching across the cold sheets for a warmth that was gone, me heart stuttering as it remembered. He wasn't there, the kitchen once alive with clinking glasses and late-night talks. Now sat mute, the only sound the drip of the coffee maker as I stared out the window, trying to piece myself back together. I was 38, newly single, and learning how to breathe again in a world that felt too big and too empty. All at once, then came the call from Lucas Thompson from his first marriage. His voice was soft, hesitant cracking, just enough to betray the weight he carried. "Can I stay with you for a bit, Claire?" Hesked. He didn't say much about why, something about his dad's place feeling like a pressure cooker. But I didn't press. Of course, I said the word slipping out before. I could think maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the loneliness, clawing at me. But I wanted him there. I thought it might fill the silence, might give us both a chance to heal when Lucas arrived. He stood in the doorway, a worn duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his hazel eyes scanning the room like he was stepping into foreign territory at 22. He was taller than I remembered, his frame lean but solid, his jaw sharper than the boy. I'd known we'd never been close. During my marriage to Tom, Lucas was polite, always respectful but distant-like. A guest who never quite settled in. I figured this would be the same two people coexisting, tiptoeing around each other's pain. I didn't know then how wrong I'd be. The first few days were quiet, almost comforting. Lucas kept to himself, disappearing into the guest room. After dinner, leaving behind only the faint sound of his footsteps on the creaky floorboards. He'd helped with chores, washing dishes, taking out the trash. Small gestures that made the house feel less like a tomb. I started cooking. Again, real meals instead of microwaved leftovers. The act of feeding someone, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in months. His presence was a balm, softening the edges of my grief, even if we barely spoke. But then something shifted. It was subtle at first, like a breeze. You don't notice until it chills your skin. Lucas started lingering after dinner, leaning against the kitchen counter as I scrubbed pots, his eyes steady and unreadable. I'd catch him watching me, not with the casual glance of a stepson, but with something heavier. Something that made my pulse quicken once I turned to find his gaze drifting down my body, only to snap back to my face when I met his eyes. My stomach twisted, a mix of unease and something I couldn't name. I should have said something, should have set a boundary, but I didn't. Instead, I looked away, pretending I hadn't noticed, and he played along, both of us, dancing around the truth. One evening, I slipped on an old sweater, soft and worn, the kind that hung loosely off one shoulder. It was nothing special, just something to keep me warm. But when Lucas's eyes met mine, across the dinner table, they held too long, too intensely. My breath caught a tight coil of heat blooming in my chest. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to my imagination. But the air between us had changed, charged with something unspoken. That night he opened up. We were sitting in the living room, the TV flickering in the background, forgotten. His voice was low, raw, as he told me about his mom, how she'd walked out when he was a kid, leaving behind a hole that never quite filled. "You were always different," he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Even when you were just in the background, you felt warm." His words landed like a stone in my chest, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to carry. It told him about my marriage, how it hadn't exploded but faded, a slow drift into nothingness. He listened, his gaze thoughtful, and for the first time I felt seen, not as Tom's wag, not as a stepmother, but as Claire, a woman unraveling. The next day, I came home to find him fixing the leaky kitchen sink, his shirt damp and clinging to his chest. He muttered a quick thank you, my eyes darting away, but he smiled, easy and warm. "No need to thank me," he said. "This place, it feels like home now." The word home hit me, hard, cracking open something. I had locked away. I hadn't felt at home in years. Not really that night. The dream started vivid, tangled visions of Lucas and me. His hands on my skin, his breath warm against my neck, our words soft and unguarded. I'd wake up gasping shame, burning through me, my body alive with a hunger. I didn't want to admit, I told myself it was grief, loneliness, anything but what it was. But every time he brushed past me in the kitchen, every time his arm grazed mine as he handed me a mug, my body remembered and my resolve. Weakened, we started sitting closer on the couch, watching late-night movies, the space between us. Shrinking sometimes, he'd fall asleep, his head resting on my shoulder, his weight both innocent and electric. I'd sit there frozen, my heart, pounding, torn between wanting to pull away and wanting to stay. Forever, I noticed everything about him now. The way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the cedarwood scent of his cologne, the way his voice softened when he asked about my day. It was dangerous, and I knew it. But the part of me that cared was growing. Quieter one night while drying dishes, his hand covered mine as he took a plate from me. His touch lingered warm and deliberate, and when I looked up, his eyes held mine unapologetic. My heart thundered loud enough if I was sure he could hear it. I stepped, back mumbling. Something about being tired and fled to me room sleep didn't come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts a tangle of guilt and desire, the shadows dancing like ghosts of who I used to be. The tension grew thick and inescapable, like humidity before a storm. I saw it in his eyes, not the boy I'd known, but a man. Looking at me, seeing me in a way I hadn't been seen in years, and I was, changing too. Dressing with more care, soft blouses, a hint of perfume, a touch of mascara. I told myself it was for me, but I saw him notice, and it thrilled me. In a way I couldn't justify. Then came the night. Everything broke open. It was a Sunday. The world outside, still no cars. No wind, just a heavy, expectant hush. I was in the kitchen wearing a soft robe, sipping the last of my wine when Lucas walked in. His hair was damp from a shower, his white t-shirt clinging slightly to his frame, his gray sweatpants low on his hips. He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, watching me load the dishwasher. The air felt too small, too tight, humming with something I couldn't ignore. I tried to fill the silence, asking if he'd eaten, if he wanted tea, if he'd talked to his dad. He answered quietly, his eyes never leaving me. Finally, I turned, drying my hands on a towel. "You're quiet tonight," I said, my voice unsteady. He nodded, his gaze steady. "I've been thinking about what I asked, my heart in my throat." His voice was low, almost a whisper, "About you, about us." The words hit like a shockwave, freezing me in place. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something sensible, but nothing came. He took a step forward, then another, his eyes locked on mine. "I know, this isn't simple," he said, his voice soft, but sure. "But nothing about how I feel for you is wrong. It doesn't feel wrong to me." He was close now, close enough I could feel the heat of his skin smell, the clean scent of his shampoo. Whispered Lucas, "This isn't." But he cut me off, not with words, but with a look. Rewind, unguarded. "It's not about what we're supposed to be," he said. "It's about what we are right now." Here his fingers brushed mine, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me. I should have pulled away, should have stopped it, but my body betrayed me. Leaning into the moment, I stepped back, not out of rejection, but because I needed air, needed to think. A move to the living room. Hope and distance would clear my head, but he followed, sitting beside me on the couch, close but not touching. "Do you know what you're doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Do you understand the weight of this?" He nodded, his eyes steady. "More than you think. You've been in pain, Claire. So have I. Maybe that's why we see each other now. Not as what we were, but what we are." I didn't speak. My hands shaking in my lap, reached out, taking one of them, his touch warm and grounding. "I know you feel it too," he said. "You're just afraid to admit it." He was right, and that terrified me. I'd felt it growing, a dangerous, beautiful thing I'd tried to bury under guilt and logic. But there it was, alive in the quiet between us, undeniable. It turned to him, and for a moment we just stared, the boy he'd been fading into them, and he was now. He leaned forward slow, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His lips brushed mine, soft and tentative, a question when I didn't. Stop him when I leaned into the kiss. Something inside me broke open. Something old, something aching. The kiss deepened, slow and searching, his hand, cradling my face like I was something precious. I kissed him back with a hunger I hadn't felt in years, a need that scared me as much as it freed me. We didn't speak. Words would have shattered the moment he stood, offering his hand, and I took it. We moved to my bedroom. Not as stepmother and Stepson, but as two people broken and reckless, leaning into something we couldn't name in the dim light. When dressed slowly, every movement, deliberate, reverent, his touch was careful, not entitled. His lips tracing my skin, like he was mapping my pain and soothing it. I felt seen, wanted, alive, in a way I'd forgotten was possible. When it was over, we lay tangled together, his head on my chest, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. Tears slipped down my cheeks, not from regret but from the raw honesty of it all. "Are you okay?" hesked, his voice soft. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes, I didn't know I needed this, you." He held me tighter. "You're not alone anymore," he said, and for the first time in years, I believed it. But morning came, and with it, reality. I woke to Lucas's steady breathing, his arm draped over me, his warmth a fleeting comfort. I slipped out of bed, wrapping myself in my robe, the weight of what we'd done settling like a stone in my chest in the kitchen. Stared out the window, my coffee cold in my hands, my thoughts a storm of guilt and longing. I heard him before. I saw him, his footsteps soft but sure. He stood behind me, silent until he spoke, his voice barely audible. "You regret it?" It turned my heart, aching at the hurt in his eyes. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't regret last night, but I don't know what to do with it now." He nodded, stepping closer. "I know it's complicated. I know how it looks, but I know what I felt, and I know what I still feel." Tears burned my eyes. It was real, I admitted, too real. "That's what scares me." The days that followed were a careful dance. We together shared space, but every glance lingered, every touch burned. It ried to lose myself in routine work, laundry. Anything but nothing could erase the memory of his hands, his voice, his warmth. One evening he came home late. His hair told his cheeks, flushed. He sat across from me, his voice low. "Have you told anyone?" I shook my head. "How could I?" He sighed, rubbing his neck. "Neither have I. But I hate this." The pretending, the silence. I nodded, my voice breaking. "It's not just about what happened, it's about what." It woke up in me. I felt the invisible after the divorce, like no one saw me, but that night you did, and it terrified me. He reached out his fingers, brushing mine. "You're not invisible to me, Claire, you never were." We wanted to fall back into that night, to reclaim that warmth, but fear held us back. Fear of judgment, of consequences, of losing each other. One night I found him on the porch, a blanket around his shoulders, staring into the dark. I sat beside him, the silence heavy. "Lucas," I said, my voice cracking. "What happens if we pretend this never happened? What happens to us?" He turned to me, his eyes tired but clear. "We become ghosts in our own house." I closed my eyes, the truth sinking deep. "I don't want to lose you," I whispered. but I don't know how to keep you." He leaned in his forehead against mine. "Maybe we stop trying to name it maybe. We just let it be whatever it is for now. And maybe he was right. There was no label for what we'd found, no need explanation. Just two people navigating a fragile, complicated intimacy. The days grew quieter, softer. Like the calm after a storm. We didn't speak of that night again. But it lived in the spaces between us, in the glances over breakfast, in the careful way we moved around each other. Lucas eventually moved out, finding a place nearby. We still see each other, still talk. But it's different now. I carry no shame, only the memory of a connection that broke me open. That reminded me I was still alive. And as I stand in my quiet house, the silence no longer feels like a void. It feels like possibility. If you are moved by Claire and Lucas's story, don't miss more tales of raw emotion and human connection. Subscribe to our channel Mother Philosophy for more stories that dive deep into the heart of what it means to love, lose, and heal.